Welcome back to OtakuDaiKun. I'm Dai-chan Alter, and it's time to talk about the new Scott Pilgrim anime, Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. Personally, I loved this short series and highly recommend it as part of the Scott Pilgrim franchise. Science Saru did a phenomenal job at bringing the original comic book style to life. However, the anime's release has garnered some fair controversy, as rather than a faithful adaptation of the original story, it is another metatextual, alternate universe sequel, much like what we see from Final Fantasy VII's remake. Whether you like the new direction or not, it's undeniable that the show's marketing deliberately misled audiences, pulling a bait and switch. Working off of that, we'll be answering two key questions. First, why deceive audiences with dishonest marketing? And second, why do so many adaptations and remakes these days insist on reinventing the wheel when it appears like they had a winning formula to start with? Before we begin, get a taste of my partnership with Entertainment Earth, a wonderful source for all your anime figure needs. Use my affiliate link to receive 10% off all in-stock items, as well as free US shipping on orders $79 and up. Unfortunately, the only Scott Pilgrim figures they have are pre-orders, but they do release in January, which is right around the corner. You can find links for the Scott and Ramona in the description. There's also a tantalizing Dai-chan Dakimakura you can order right now from Cuddly Octopus. Doesn't she just make you weak in the knees? She's also available to purchase from the description. Now, back to Scott Pilgrim. The new anime was both written and developed by Brian Lee O'Malley, the creator of the comic books. Instead of just animating these comics, he decided to tell a new story, branching from a twist at the end of episode 1. Basically, the anime makes it seem like Scott gets killed in his first battle. His love interest, Ramona, figures out he's actually been kidnapped and spends the next 5 of the anime's 8 episodes trying to find him. One could reasonably argue that the story features more of Ramona than it does Scott, which has angered fans on social media. Many are treating it as a woke feminist takeover, with the female character hijacking what should be a man's story, asserting that women can only stand out over the humiliation and incompetence of men. Thankfully, I can assure you that is not the case here. Scott features heavily in the 3 episodes he's in and gets plenty of action. He's treated no differently than he was in previous works. Sure, he's naive and the butt of many jokes, but Scott Pilgrim is a story loaded with endearingly flawed characters. While Scott is naive, the evil exes are often vain, overconfident, and egotistical. Everyone gets made fun of, with the same comedic charm Brian Lee is known for. Plus, Ramona isn't some unwanted intrusion. She's a total waifu, and it's adorable watching her patch things up with her exes and search for Scott despite having only just met him. The new story gives everyone some well-needed development, transforming Ramona from manic pixie dream girl into a more fleshed-out character. It's not trying to undermine the original, but expand upon it. That said, the timing of this plot twist plagues the anime, making it hard not to compare it to other recent stories that are far less enjoyable. The most relevant comparison is to Masters of the Universe Revelation, which put its iconic protagonist He-Man on the bench, while a more masculine Teela took over as the central hero. We've also got Indiana Jones in the Dial of Destiny, which tried to replace the aging Harrison Ford with a more ESG-friendly Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Can you believe they want to cast her as the new Lara Croft? She's neither buff nor bodacious. Can the bar get any lower? These are shifts that nobody asked for, and it's frustrating to see Scott Pilgrim tossed in the same rancid trash can. If anything is truly wrong with the show, it is the marketing. The Netflix trailers, and even the show's promotional poster, give the impression that the anime will be a faithful adaptation of its source material. They don't mention the big twist or new premise at all. While the creators have stated in interviews that the story would be different, not many fans read those interviews, nor should they have to. Even for those who did, there was no telling just how drastic the changes would be. Surely fans would have responded better had trailers been honest from the start. The show could have been titled Scott Pilgrim, Ramona's Quest, and featured her on the poster, so why not? I can think of 3 reasons, but only one of them is optimistic, and it just so happens to be the one I believe the least. It's the idea that the marketing team was simply naive. They didn't want to show off too much of the show, and didn't anticipate the backlash. Perhaps they never considered episode 1 to be a bait-and-switch after all, though I highly doubt this was the case. If it were, then the marketing team was incredibly inept. You'd have to be living under a rock not to see the drama coming. It's far more likely that the marketing intentionally created this drama for the sake of attention and views. To them, a show can't just come out, please its target audience, and leave a solid impression. Instead, perhaps they wanted to make Scott Pilgrim more topical to attract viewers who weren't already Scott Pilgrim fans. By taking a portion of those fans and roughing them up with an unexpected twist, they could be manipulated into arguing on social media, forming a cloud of discussion that serves as free advertising. People are attracted to outrage, and you're far more likely to score a trending hashtag by sparking some controversy than if you simply pleased the fans. The ensuing chaos would make Scott Pilgrim seem especially topical, and at the very least, would remind a wider spread of viewers that a Scott Pilgrim anime was even a thing. In other words, there's no such thing as bad publicity. It's better to be a villain than to be a nobody. To an extent, I understand this mentality, but that doesn't mean I support it. I can't exactly look at the metrics, but it's possible that Scott Pilgrim is doing better because of the drama. After all, without the controversy, I wouldn't even be making this video. If it works, of course the marketing team is going to exploit our obsession with outrage. The same goes for clickbait on YouTube. If you can exaggerate or sensationalize a video's thumbnail, it doesn't really matter if that thumbnail is accurate to what's in the video. All that matters is that you grabbed someone's attention and got them to click. If that disgusting Velma show is anything to go by, then hate watching is a real thing. Even if this method does work, we still have every right to criticize it. You might just be gaming the system, but so long as you do, you also perpetuate it. The other reason Scott Pilgrim may have been misadvertised is that the creators weren't confident in their own work. Rather, they may have feared audiences wouldn't respond well to a Ramona-based show, and being honest about it would have chased off potential viewers. However, by tricking fans into watching a faithful adaptation only to reveal it's anything but, there's a chance that skeptics will keep watching anyway, now that they've gotten invested. That's the theory, anyway. It reminds me of what Brian Intihar said about his Spider-Man 2 game on PS5. Put bluntly, fans aren't pleased by Mary Jane's new design. She looks older and uglier than ever, and as if to shove it down your throat, the game features lots of forced sections where you play as her, despite the director being fully aware of how fans feel about them. Not only does he not give a shit, but he also says this:
give people stuff you know they want, so you can inject things that maybe they aren't familiar with or maybe they don't know they want, but make them like that stuff.
You can tell Brian's trying so hard not to say that he injects things we don't want, but it's true. It's not that we don't know we want it, we just don't want it, and he's trying to jam it down our throats anyway. Normally I'd be down for that, but not when it's with Mary Jaw right here. It's arrogant and deceitful, taking advantage of a natural phenomenon for his own benefit. Admittedly, it's true, we don't always know what we want. We can only ever speak to experiences we've had, and everything you enjoy now came from trying out different things. It's quite possible that your favorite food was something you were initially skeptical about. However, it's still up to us to decide on our own what to pursue. It's meant to be an organic process, not a coerced one. Imagine someone trying to rope you into sex. You say you're not comfortable, but your partner insists you'll like it. You just don't know it yet. Maybe that's true, but that doesn't make the coercion any less rapey. This tactic is flawed, in that there's no guarantee people will actually like something just because they're tricked into being exposed to it. I don't know about you, but I won't start liking spicy food, even if people keep sneaking spice into what I eat. Putting plus-sized models on magazine covers won't possibly deter me from enjoying slim, fit women. Making Western characters ugly isn't going to change my standard of what is and isn't appealing. Similarly, the kinds of people who would abandon Scott Pilgrim knowing Ramona's the main character won't suddenly start liking Ramona because they were tricked into it. Rather, the opposite might occur. I'm sure there are fans who would absolutely love and prefer a Ramona show, but because they were misled, they won't watch it as a matter of principle. People don't like surprises or being lied to, even if that surprise winds up being pleasant in the long run. Obviously, I'm very much of the opinion that Scott Pilgrim Takes Off should have featured Scott's supposed death in the trailers. It should have sold the show on the idea that Ramona would play a major role, while also assuring fans that there's plenty of cool Scott moments too. I can't prove it, but I suspect the anime would have done better being honest. That leads me to our next question. Why couldn't this have been a faithful adaptation? Why is it that whenever creators revisit old properties, they insist on trying to redefine it in some way? There are plenty of reasons, so let's go over all the possibilities. The reason I dread the most is that creators feel an old story won't be appealing anymore because fans already know what's going to happen. Creators may think they need to reinvent the wheel just to keep our excitement. This is something I fundamentally disagree with, and it seems to be the prevailing mentality behind the changes made in Final Fantasy VII Remake. Square feels that, since we've already experienced the original, they have to keep putting twists into the new story so that fans remain hyped and surprised. They'll ask questions like, will Aerith wind up living this time? Will they kill someone else off instead? Well, there are always going to be fans who flip out over teaser trailers, analyzing the crap out of each and every new thing. That only represents a specific kind of hype. There are just as many fans who get excited by knowing things will be just as they remember. What Square has clearly forgotten is that a good story is worth telling over and over again. Just because you know what's going to happen next, that doesn't mean it isn't valuable to re-experience. There's more to a story than plot twists after all, and if your story is only enjoyable the first time round, then it's a bad story. The final boss of FF7 Remake is against Sephiroth, and it clearly references the final battle of the original game. However, this ending is just part one of a three-part saga. The creators thought that, because we've already seen the original game's ending, there was no harm in getting us to that fight prematurely. Yet, what makes that fight great is the journey that led up to it. That foreplay is very important. Even if we remember the journey, the characters don't. Thus, the battle wasn't properly earned and felt really shallow. It's extremely ironic to think fans don't want a faithful adaptation, because at first, that was exactly how these adaptations were advertised to us. You can't tell me fans wouldn't enjoy vanilla Scott Pilgrim or FF7, because we were already interested in them before we found out about the changes. Nobody was watching those early trailers thinking, this looks cool, but I won't buy it unless it has a radically different story. Instead, these companies used the originals as bait to switch out with new stories, and that strategy simply wouldn't have worked if fans were bored by the originals. Perhaps it's not the fans who are bored, but the creators. Perhaps they aren't as thrilled about the prospect of a remake as we are. Maybe they felt like their original creation was flawless and not in need of an update. Maybe they're just sick of telling the same story. Thus, if fans ask a creator to revisit their own work, they're going to use it as an opportunity to innovate rather than give fans what they truly want. I can sympathize with this to an extent. Whenever I make videos that aren't about the Fate series, for instance, they typically don't get as many views. What I want to create isn't necessarily what viewers want me to create. That's just how things roll. Sometimes creators change modern adaptations so that they don't invalidate the original work. For example, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition is aptly named because it more or less replaces the Wii version. With the game's better graphics, quality of life adjustments, and extra content, there's really no reason to go back to the Wii for what is arguably an inferior experience. It's possible that Brian Lee didn't want the new Scott Pilgrim anime to compete with his comics. With movement and sound, the anime could easily depict the comic story, but do it even better and with more detail. By making its story new, however, fans still have a reason to experience both the comic and anime for their own merits. Sadly, this is often accompanied by the criticism that if you don't like the new version, you can always just go back to the old, which for many invalidates the whole point of a remake altogether. Still, in this case, it shows the creator very much cares about what they created back then. By preserving the relevance of the original, they endorse its quality. Other creators, however, revisit their old works to try and fix them. I call this the George Lucas effect. With advancements in CGI technology, Lucas went back to the original Star Wars trilogy and updated it with a number of changes. He claimed he couldn't tell the story he truly wanted to without computer graphics, and so he made his special editions to replace the theatrical versions. The old cuts are no longer even relegated to the special features on home video. Other times, creators feel ashamed of what they made and use updated remakes to try and erase what they consider to be problematic. This would definitely be the case for Resident Evil and Mass Effect, which have both been remade to feature less sexual designs and situations. This always pisses me off, as it implies I was wrong for ever liking the originals, or even preferring them over newer iterations. It's even worse when new creators step into a project they didn't originally create. They make changes not just to things they don't approve of, but also to leave their own mark on the franchise, similar to how certain localizers change scripts to inflate their own egos. My most frustrating example is Netflix's live-action Cowboy Bebop, which was clearly made by people with contempt for the original. The new creators took issue with Gren's original depiction, and instead reimagined his character as non-binary. Similarly, we have Daniela Pineda, who worked with designers to alter Faye's iconic outfit, taking issue with the original for being too sexualized. Folks like this arrogantly try to dictate what aspects of the original are and aren't important. The last reason I can think of is more technical. An original work is changed when being adapted to a new medium. For example, even though the Scott Pilgrim movie was mostly faithful to the comics, it still had to cut and adjust things for the sake of runtime and realism. There was no ill will there, but the same can't be said for Square Enix. Along with their changes to the original FF7, Square announced they would be providing fans a more authentic experience with their mobile game Ever Crisis. While it's supposed to follow the original timeline, and is therefore arguably faithful in that one regard, so much else about the game changed so that it could fit the mobile gacha market. The battle system is far less sophisticated, and now relies on loot box drops and limited grinding, rather than actually exploring the world and earning your strength. When it comes to gameplay, the remake by comparison is surprisingly more faithful. To me, it's just weird, because when I look at these stories, I see a winning formula. The first episode of Scott Pilgrim Takes Off shows just how possible it would be to fully adapt the comics into anime form. Even though I love the new storyline, I wouldn't mind also getting to watch a proper adaptation. In the case of Final Fantasy VII, fans wanted to see a story they already loved get brought to life by Square's modern technology. For as much as Square's games look and play phenomenally, they haven't had a decent narrative in a long time now. Almost all of them, including the third birthday, implemented wishy-washy Kingdom Hearts-esque logic, making them a complete mess. FF7, however, already had a beloved cast of characters and a solid story that could be used to effectively pin down the creators and give them a blueprint to follow. The end result would have been a modern Square title with a story that, for once, doesn't suck. Sometimes I feel like I'm a crazy person because they had a winning formula right there, yet these weird metatextual spin-offs just keep coming. Back in the day, we didn't think to ask for authentic remakes because we didn't realize just how unfaithful they could become. Now, however, the discussion is far more relevant, and I think Scott Pilgrim's anime is an interesting addition to that discussion. Now, how about you, darlings? Did you enjoy Scott Pilgrim Takes Off? Do you think it would have been better for them to be honest with their marketing? Even if you did enjoy the anime, do you still wish it had been a proper adaptation instead? Cover me with your thoughts in the comments below.
Thanks for watching.
If you enjoy this channel, help us grow by liking, commenting, sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiKun, and
Most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all our anime lore, discussions, and Let's Play content.
you can support us directly through Patreon, Subscribestar, or a YouTube membership, all of which come with benefits like spicy exclusive vids and early access.
As always, celebrate your fandom. I want to give a special shout out to all my $10 and up supporters: VideoGamer75, Dante Pendragon, Stephen Elak, Samuel Gersten, The Nonchalant Ostrich, Otaku Mom, Jens Bauman, Mystic Samurai 1983, Lord Omagoden, Freebrick, Alexis Yukio Gomez Yamato, Olympian Doll, Link Pendrago, Observer Bellis, James Hewitt, Uncanny EXP, King Kobo, Scout, Andre Foster, Zamas Autonomous, Yukie Iros, Crow Kalem, Saul Soto, Sogai CH, Caitlin P, Vladimirovna, The Taz 96, Kengo X 77, Alistair Bernadotte, and Akakaze Yume. Thank you all so much.